There was a time when ordinary civilians had to think like sentries. During World War II, millions of households across Europe and parts of Asia were left exposed. No police response in minutes, no alarm systems, no surveillance cameras. Just families, their homes, and the constant threat of intrusion, looting, or worse. What's fascinating is not just how they survived, but how quietly effective their methods were. These weren't high-tech solutions. They were simple, clever, and rooted in awareness of human behavior. And here's the truth. Many of those techniques still work today, not because technology hasn't advanced, but because human nature hasn't changed. Understanding why wartime homes relied on psychology over force. The biggest misconception about home defense in wartime is that it was about brute force or confrontation. In reality, most civilians avoided direct conflict at all costs. The real goal was deterrence, early warning, and buying time. People understood that an intruder, whether a desperate looter or a soldier, was less likely to act if they felt exposed, detected, or slowed down. One widely used approach was creating uncertainty. Homeowners would deliberately make it difficult for anyone approaching the house to know whether someone was inside or watching. Simple routines like leaving a faint light visible from a covered window or placing objects in positions that would shift if disturbed created psychological pressure. Today, this translates directly into modern practices like motion lights or timed lighting, but the principle is identical. Uncertainty discourages action. Using noise as an early warning system was more effective than silence. Silence might seem like safety, but wartime households knew better. Noise was a tool. Doors, gates and pathways were often rigged in subtle ways to produce sound if disturbed. Loose gravel on entry paths, slightly unbalanced hinges, or carefully placed household items created audible cues without requiring constant vigilance. You can apply this principle today without anything extreme. A simple example is placing a lightweight object behind a door so it shifts or falls when opened unexpectedly. Another is using materials like gravel or dry leaves along less used entry points to create unavoidable sound. The goal isn't to trap anyone, it's to ensure you are never caught off guard. Strategic clutter slowed intruders without drawing attention. One overlooked tactic from wartime homes was controlled clutter. Not mess, but deliberate placement of obstacles in areas where an intruder might move quickly. Narrow hallways, back entrances or stairways often had items positioned to force slower movement. This wasn't random, it was calculated. People understood that unfamiliar environments already put intruders at a disadvantage. Adding subtle obstacles increased hesitation and reduced speed, giving occupants more time to react. In a modern setting, this could mean avoiding overly clear, straight paths from entry points to valuables. Even something as simple as rearranging furniture to eliminate direct lines of movement can make a difference. The key is subtlety, nothing that signals intent, but enough to disrupt momentum. Light control gave homeowners a powerful advantage at night. Blackout conditions during the war forced people to master light discipline. But, beyond avoiding detection from the air, this also had a defensive advantage. Homes were often kept dim inside while maintaining visibility of the outside environment. This created a kind of one-way advantage. Anyone approaching the house was visible, while those inside remained harder to see. Curtains, partial coverings, and controlled lighting angles played a big role. You can replicate this effect today by thinking carefully about how light works in your home at night. Avoid bright interior lighting that silhouettes movement from outside. Instead, use softer, indirect lighting indoors while ensuring outdoor areas are more visible. It's a small adjustment that shifts control back to you. Layered entry points made forced access slower and riskier. Another key principle was layering. Instead of relying on just a single strong door or lock, wartime homes often use multiple barriers. A gate, followed by a door, followed by an interior latch, created delays at each stage. This wasn't about making entry impossible. It's about making it time-consuming and, well, noticeable. Every additional step increased the chances of detection or abandonment. In practical terms, think of your home in layers. A perimeter boundary, a secure main entry, and an internal barrier, like a secondary lock or reinforced door, can dramatically improve security without requiring anything extreme. Even simple additions like a secondary latch or door brace can echo this layered approach. Decoys and misdirection reduce the risk of loss. People during the war often assumed that if someone was determined to enter, they might succeed, so they planned accordingly. Valuables were rarely kept in obvious places, and decoy items were sometimes left in more visible locations. This reduced the likelihood of a thorough search and increased the chances that an intruder would leave quickly after finding something. Today, this idea still holds value. Keeping important items out of predictable locations and avoiding obvious storage spots can reduce risk. It's not about deception for its own sake. It's about minimizing potential loss if the worst happens. Community awareness was the most powerful defense of all. Perhaps the most important lesson from wartime home defense is that no house stood alone. Neighbors looked out for each other, shared information, and created informal networks of awareness. Suspicious activity rarely went unnoticed because people paid attention, not out of fear, but out of necessity. This collective vigilance often prevented incidents before they happened. In modern life, this principle is just as relevant. Knowing your neighbors, maintaining communication, and simply being observant can be more effective than any device. A community that notices things is a community that deters threats. These forgotten techniques still matter because human behavior hasn't changed. Technology has evolved, but the fundamentals of security remain rooted in behavior. How people think, react, and make decisions under pressure. The methods used during World War II worked because they exploited hesitation, uncertainty, and risk perception. Applying these ideas today doesn't require drastic measures. It requires awareness, subtle adjustments, and an understanding that effective home defense is less about confrontation and more about control, time, and deterrence. If this kind of deep dive into overlooked history and practical survival knowledge resonates with you, make sure to subscribe and share this with someone who values real-world wisdom. There's a lot more hidden in the past that still has the power to protect us today.